This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Welcome to the show, everybody. Thank you for checking out another episode of Real Talk. Coming up in just a second, Tristin Hopper from the National Post. We're going to get into a wild story. Tristin flagged it, as a matter of fact. He's got this first reading. It's an email you can subscribe to. Highly recommended, and gives you kind of the lay of the land, at least what's catching Tristin's attention from his, from his position on Canada's west coast. And the story of Heather Gilchrist had been flying under my radar. We'll get into it. Kind of a wild one. It calls into question checks and balances on immigration and policies, challenges facing Canadian immigrants. In this case, an English language speaker who's being flagged, threatened with deportation for lack of language proficiency, or at least that's what the headline looks like. There's some small print, as oftentimes there is, so we'll get into that. And I'm not sure if you've seen this as well. Some of you may flag this as too soon as the investigation continues at LaGuardia Airport. Obviously, 2 Canadian pilots killed in just an absolute tragedy, 2 young pilots at the relative beginnings of their career. But it's a condolence video released by an Air Canada executive that has triggered dozens of complaints. The fact that he didn't speak French, aside from a bonjour and a merci, bookending his condolence video. If we're talking about language in Canada, and if we're talking about laws and regulations, we might as well get into that one. And I will say, on the back 9 of this episode, after we take you out to Jasper for MyJasper Memories, Real Talkers continue to send in very personal, very moving accounts on how their family has been impacted, generally speaking, by MAiD. This, as Alberta looks at making significant changes to MAiD access in the province. We'll get into that moving stuff from Aly down in Calgary. Les sent us a note as well. We want to get through both of those before the end of this week, and we'll get to at least one of them today. This episode is happening with the presenting sponsorship. You see the bottle here on the desk, and this MAiD cream liqueur from Hanson Distillery is getting everybody talking. I was walking by one of my favorite shops, Sip, on 124th Street in Alberta's capital city. I see they've got it there. Was checking in with my friends at Vine Arts. I said, you guys got to make sure you have lots of bottles of this. Everybody's looking for them. MAiD, just in time for Easter, but not limited to Easter, I would say, is an incredible candied milk chocolate small batch. They've done just 2,000 bottles of them, which means that they're going to sell out anytime soon, especially priced at $32 a bottle. But by the team at Hanson, everything that they do, we say, is made right here. And there's no difference with MAiD. They follow that formula with this homage to, everybody says, childhood treats. I mean, like the best Easter candy of all time's got to be MAiD. Once you start, you can't stop. Well, MAiD built on that tradition. Playful, a bite-sized moment of joy in a bottle as versatile as it is luxurious. Whether you're enjoying MAiD on the rocks, in your coffee, or perhaps you'll find your own creative way to do it. Some Real Talkers telling us they're enjoying it over ice cream. You do you, Real Talkers. Enjoy with the knowledge that a portion of the proceeds of every bottle of MAiD sold is going to go toward the Zebra Child Protection Center. Just another way our friends at Hanson Distillery are ensuring that they give back to the community that supports them. You can learn more, read about MAiD, place your order from afar at hansondistillery.com. Not sure if this story's been on your radar yet, Real Talkers, but it's kind of bonkers, raising eyebrows across the country and fueling a bigger conversation about how Canada's systems are actually working. Tristin Hopper, in a National Post column, you can check it out at nationalpost.com, has highlighted the story of Heather Gilchrist. She's a Scottish-born midwife, native English speaker who's now facing possible deportation, as mentioned. She's on the clock for allegedly failing to meet federal language requirements. So the case, and Tristin will lay it out for us, basically hinges on how Ottawa assesses language proficiency, but critics say that it's exposing a rigid system, like bureaucracy, baby, that delivers outcomes, right, that don't necessarily pass the common sense test. Midwifery, as you may or may not know, is obviously a highly valued and important discipline within the healthcare system, but they're having issues meeting staffing levels, recruiting young talent to enter the profession. In many provinces, asking midwives to stick around past their intended dates of requirement to make sure that Canadians have access to the service. So sending one home for reasons that don't make sense on the surface, well, you can understand why Canadians are raising red flags. Tristin argues that it's part of a broader pattern. So let's get into it with him, correspondent for the National Post, joining us from beautiful British Columbia, Tristin Hopper, in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Nice to see your face again, my man. It's been a while.
I'm glad to be presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West.
Unfortunately, there's not a Mercedes en route to you. There has been some confusion with guests in past.
Oh, no, that's fine. No,
Yeah.
my preferred automobile is the, a 25-year-old Mercedes that you can bash into things.
Yeah, there
they
you
last
go.
forever. If I can, they didn't tell me to promote Mercedes-Benz automobiles, but very durable vehicles.
They are very durable vehicles, and they'll last forever. And right now my brain is suggesting, the back part of it, that I should find some way to segue from German automobiles to Scottish midwives.
Scottish midwives, yeah.
I'm
So
sure
the
if
story
anyone
of,
could do it, you could.
Well, the story of Heather Gilchrist, so she's here in Victoria with me, and essentially, so she did everything right, came to Canada about 2 years ago, 58-year-old Scottish midwife, 10 years of experience, and BC is trumpeting the fact that it's trying to attract foreign health professionals. Healthcare is a problem everywhere, particularly here in BC. So one of the things that our provincial government is doing is saying, well, we're bringing doctors from the UK, the US. We are attracting foreign talent, reducing wait lines. So Gilchrist was one of those. And so she came over. Before you get your certification in Canada, you have to go to a bridging program at UBC. So she went to the bridging program, paid her own way, paid all of this, qualified as a midwife, had started working as a midwife last September. And to continue working, she had to transition from her study permit, which she held while she was at UBC, to a postgraduate work permit. Now, in applying for that, if you speak to any immigrant to Canada, even if you're American, even if you're British, even if the only language you speak is English, one of the most widely mocked processes of being an immigrant to Canada is that you have to fill out your CELPIP. I forget what that stands for, but this is essentially verification that you speak English. So I don't know if you've ever had Johnny Wakefield on your show, reported with the Edmonton Journal. American, was immigrating to Canada. He had to go to a 3-hour course where, speaks perfect English. He's American. Where nevertheless, you have to go through the motions of what does this sound like? Write this down. So it's just humiliating for a native English speaker. It's a humiliating 3.5 hours, and it's very expensive. It's $330 in Gilchrist case. So anyway, she had done this. She had her CELPIP, but she's filling out the application for the postgraduate work permit, and then there's a glitch online. As far as I can tell, this is purely a technical glitch. In filling it out, for some reason, they could not process the CELPIP. So I think maybe when she was doing it, it didn't prompt her to send it in, or there was now when you actually go through the postgraduate work permit application, it says, oh, we can't actually process your CELPIP. So you have to go to this other portal and then sign into this other portal and send it in, and it can only be in a PDF, and if you submit 2 PDFs, it cancels both of them. So obviously something is technically wrong with how this is done. But either way, the process didn't accept her CELPIP. Thus, 2 weeks ago, she gets this random letter, and she's in the middle of delivering babies. She's a full-time midwife now here in Victoria. And it just says, oh, you didn't prove your CELPIP. You've lost your residency. You've lost your work permit. You have 90 days. You will be deported if you don't get out of the country now. And, there's an appeals process. But I guess what's so crazy about this, first of all, she obviously speaks English. And second of all, she thought, okay, well, I have the CELPIP. I can obviously speak English. I'll just call someone and say, there was an error. Here it is. I've had it the whole time, and this will all be taken care of. And instead, it's just been this odyssey of getting form letters back from the immigration department, contacting our MP, contacting the Minister of Health for BC, saying, you wanted foreign professionals to come, and now I'm being, completely screwed over by some technical glitch with your federal immigration department. Could you please deal with it before I have to leave and I'm out $60,000 and filled with a hatred of Canada for the rest of my life?
Right.
He didn't say that, but I imagine that would be the outcome.
That would be the feeling.
Yeah. She said she would be very upset if no one answered her calls about looking at this one document, and as a result, she had to leave Canada and was out $60,000 and a future career in midwifery. So that's the case. I mean, a lot of this comes at the tail end of, we've heard a lot of about a lot of mismanagement at Immigration Canada, IRCC, Immigration Refugees Citizenship Canada. I wish they would shorten the name so it's easier for people like me to mention it in news stories. But just this week, you had the Auditor General on Monday saying there's just widespread mismanagement of the student visa system. So the takeaway headline from that report on Monday was that there was 150,000 foreigners who came here on student visas just between 2023 and 2024 who were there were no shows. They came in on student visas and then just didn't show up to class, stopped showing up to class. They were believed to be in violation of their student visas, 150,000. And then this report finds, well, how many of those did you investigate? You have someone who came here. We don't know where they are. They obviously aren't students. It seems like they entered the country fraudulently. 150,000 is a lot. How many did you investigate? And the Auditor General found it was 4,000. So we have this weird dynamic here where you have thousands of people getting into the country with basically no security checks. We don't know if they're leaving. I mean, I don't know if you covered it on the show, but Surrey, BC right now, has a pretty massive problem with foreign gangs running an extortion crisis. And the information we're getting is that's largely people who entered the country on fraudulent student visas. So on the one hand, you've got an immigration system that's so mismanaged, so unscreened, that you're importing whole foreign gangs that are basically terrorizing Surrey, BC, while at the same time, you've got Heather Gilchrist, exactly who we want as an immigrant. She's coming. We don't have enough midwives. We need more midwives. Speaks English, everything. And we're going to throw her out because of the dumbest possible reason ever. And and another thing that sort of struck me as I was looking at this, as I've sort of been writing about the immigration system, is you've seen crazy amounts of automation. So just after COVID, Canada just blew out every possible immigration stream. So foreign students, temporary foreign workers, permanent residents, asylum seekers, all of those streams were dialed up to highs unlike any in our history. So whichever aspect of the immigration system you worked in, you were being hit with 5 to 10 times the workload you had experienced in the pre-COVID era. And you're just coming out of COVID, you were working from home, social distancing, and then bam, you're just getting walloped. So one thing that we're learning from insiders within the immigration system is that they coped by basically automating everything. So there was the head of the union representing CBSA members was saying, well, we used to screen asylum seekers. So this is someone comes into Canada. We don't really do illegal border crossings anymore because of the Safe Third Country Agreement, but this is someone who comes to Canada for whatever reason, claims asylum. And the head of this union was telling a House of Commons committee, well, we used to do sort of a basic security screening package, but now, because we're so overwhelmed, that's been automated. So now you can actually claim asylum on an app. So you're never actually meeting a government employee. You're just saying, yeah, I'm not a terrorist. Don't worry. Click, 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 click. True. So you're processed, but we've obviously lost something in that particular process. And then we had another revelation. This was a story published in The Hub by a former director with IRCC who said the asylum seeker system is so overwhelmed that they've put in a system under which more than 20,000 asylum seekers have been granted refugee status without even an in-person interview. So all across the immigration system, you've seen a whole process that used to be done personally for very good reasons, because in an in-person interview, If someone is coming in fraudulently, if someone is potentially a risk to the country, it's a security risk, whatever, that usually can turn up in an in-person interview. It's better than nothing. So we've had this full automation, and the other side of that appears to be what Heather Gilchrist is being hit with.
Yeah.
When you hand the entire immigration system over to computers, you get these really dumb outcomes in which you obviously speak English, but you didn't get the particular form that allows you to speak English, and you weren't able to submit it because of a technical glitch. And now there are just massive real-world consequences. So this is kind of a preview of coming attractions, in the AI era, automation, where we're just getting royally screwed over by the government through process. I mean, she still hasn't spoken to a human at IRCC. I mean, she sort of appealed this, and she's just getting form letters back. The name is unspecified. You read her. I should have included it in the article, but the article that said she has 90 days to leave the country is just sort of this very brutal, cold form letter, and it's signed by Officer SV. So this whole thing sounds like kind of a sci-fi novel.
Officer SV.
Officer. So I don't know if that stands for something, or I wouldn't be surprised if that is just an AI.
That might just be the font they're using or something, Officer SV. This is interesting timing. I won't spoil it, Johnny. I don't know if you've seen this either, but just last night I started watching, have you seen this new film, Mercy, with Chris Pratt? I won't get too into it, and I fell asleep halfway through, so I won't wreck it for anybody, but this is, he's a police detective that's accused in the murder of his wife, and he has 90 minutes to prove his innocence, already strapped into the chair that could be used to facilitate his execution if he's found guilty, and he has 90 minutes to prove his innocence in front of an AI judge. I'm not sure if you've seen this movie, but very interesting stuff. So this kind of like, it feels like we go, oh, this is like far off into the future. A lot of this stuff, I'm not talking about judges and executions in the next 5 years, but you're 100% right when it comes to AI and computers and sort of automated processes. Also add in the fact, and we'll let the audience know, Tristin, we'll talk about this within the next 20 minutes or so, but you've got an interesting look at how the Carney government's dialing back immigration levels is impacting real estate markets and kind of some interesting ripple effects there. Let me say this, which may be obvious. You've done a wonderful job, and if people are just tuning in on our live stream presented by California Closets, we're talking to Tristin Hopper from Vancouver Island, his story at nationalpost.com. Canada threatening a native English speaker, a Scottish midwife, Heather Gilchrist, with deportation for not speaking English. You've explained why and how, and you know how it goes. No offense to you or anybody else, but for a lot of folks, their eyes will glaze over once we start getting into the details and the submitted this and the class and the proficiency. But on the surface, the story that everybody will see in Canada and abroad is basically somebody put 60 grand of their own money on the line. Let's also mention, right, I think it was about 8 years ago, she lost her husband, a cycling accident. He was hit by a drunk driver. She needed something new in her life. Her kids recommended she come to Canada. Like, this is a woman who is a professional, by the way, who put her faith in Canada and who basically accepted an invitation to come to Canada. A British citizen who comes to Canada, and like you said, when a technicality sort of raises whatever flag or concern with Canadian immigration officials, the first step, and she's noted, it's reported in your piece, like she's tried to call her MP, she's reached out to you can imagine she's exhausting every single avenue, but like you said, the letter is basically like, get the fuck out or we'll come get you. That's basically the letter. Like, if you don't
This is correct. Yeah, you didn't meet it's very cold, bureaucratic. It's a nightmare.
It's a tough look for Canada on the international stage. And this is the type of story, people may scoff at this. This is the type of story that can have legs. And this is the type of story that could 100% dissuade people who may be choosing from a number of different destinations to take their talents, right? And this isn't all, I don't want to sort of put this the wrong way, because, refugees and people, like, that's one sort of angle and element of immigration, and that's a very real challenge, and those people are living a hellish nightmare right now and trying to do everything they can oftentimes to help their kids. Then there's other streams of immigration. In this case, we're talking about, like, birth rates in Canada not being where they need, and in many cases, healthcare in particular, healthcare and hospitality. Tourism's another big one where employers will tell you, people doing the hiring will tell you they don't don't have enough candidates. This is the exact type of situation where you would hope someone would choose Canada, and I bet you there's going to be more than a few people that see this and go, I would never risk. Imagine if I risked my own 60 grand. Imagine if I inconvenienced myself. Imagine if I moved my whole life to Canada and then got treated like this. It's brutal.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of just we need people like Gilchrist. When I think of my own, Scottish or British forebears coming to the country, she's contributing way more than they are, and they weren't kicked out on the technicality. But it actually reminds me of ArriveCan. Remember when the entire border was in the hands of this wildly unnecessarily expensive cell phone app? I don't know if you crossed the border during that time. Mm-hmm. There was a period of time you could not get back into the country unless you filed your details through ArriveCan. And this was similar. This was the government saying, well, we'll just trust the entire border to this app. That's glitchy. There actually were technical glitches with the app, and what would happen is someone would come in, they'd done all of their various COVID protocols, but because the app was broken, it would sentence them to essentially 2 weeks of house arrest. You have to social distance around. I'm actually forgetting what we used to call it back then. So there was completely innocent people who essentially had to put their entire lives on hold, stay at home for 2 weeks at risk of criminal sanctions because an app had told them to. And I'm thinking, I was crossing the border and there was a problem with my cell phone and I couldn't fill out the app for whatever reason. And I remember going to the border station and they said, sorry, there's no way around the app. You have to stay here. You have to call someone to bring their cell phone and bring the app. There's nothing we can do. And I was like, what? Aside from I just leave the border and you just tackle me and I end up in prison. And luckily the guy was very good at de-escalation and was able to talk me down. But it was similar to that, in which you think of any normal process. So say you're applying for a mortgage and you forgot one particular form, you would just have someone within the bank or the credit union say, oh, you forgot this form, can you send it in? I mean, that's what this should have been, and that's what this used to be. I mean, you would have had a case officer that was able to pay attention to the forms that were actually being sent in. But instead, you've just got algorithm talking to algorithm, and then right in the middle of it is Heather Gilchrist. And she's not the only one. As I detail in the story, this particular issue with the postgraduate work permit, her specific permit, the problem with the website where you couldn't fill in your language requirements, this is hitting potentially hundreds of other people in her situation. And they're going to be disproportionately medical professionals, all of these people that the government keeps saying, this is exactly the immigrant we want, this is the one we need. So Gilchrist told me she only went to the press. She was hoping to sort of deal with this quietly. She only went to the press after the BC government had another press conference touting the number of U.S. doctors they had attracted to BC. So she said, oh, screw this. I'm going to the press. I'm going to all of the press. I mean, it is making headlines in the UK, in Scotland. And probably around the world at this point.
Jillian's in our live chat, powered by Park Power. She says, okay, so we've gone from students staying beyond their visas to gangs coming in without criminal checks to asylum seekers not being screened. The question is, are they eating the dogs? Are they eating the cats? I'll take the point from Jillian that it may come across as sensational or as piling on new Canadians. She goes on, by the way, to say, she says it won't dissuade anybody. No Brit or English person will be dissuaded. Britain's a shit show. I would say to Jillian, I'm sure she's aware. She's a very engaged audience member. I mean, reporting in the Toronto Star, you can look anywhere you want. You can Google it. This report from just a couple of days ago, Canada's international student program blasted by the Auditor General for failing to address integrity concerns. Now, of course, immigration is a highly political file. We've seen when we had Sean Fraser on the show, former immigration minister, the live chat, the opponents of Minister Fraser were vociferous and outspoken and made many fair points. And I think if you look back on the Liberal immigration record for a number of years, you can find areas where it fell well short. And I think that, to be fair, to Mark Carney, maybe in a moment, by the way, I'll ask you to give him a report card grade for his first year. We asked that of Linda Steele yesterday. You can give me one too. But if you look, that was one of his top priorities. The Prime Minister himself acknowledged it was an issue on a number of different fronts, including immigration levels. In some cases, they cut them in half or more, including with post-secondary students.
Yeah, so, I mean, you have seen all the way back, this was the tail end of the Trudeau era. Right up until 2024, you had Justin Trudeau saying, oh, this isn't a problem if you have any criticism of immigration levels. And I would actually say some of the loudest criticism of immigration levels was coming from recent immigrant communities because they were seeing what was happening. They were familiar with these processes, with these immigration processes. And you just look at the charts. I mean, you had for decades, you had sort of an incremental rise in permanent residents. You know, you'd have a bit more each year. And you know, way back in the Conservative era, that was actually a high immigration government. The last year of Harper's tenure, 2014, that was the highest rate of permanent residence in 100 years, going all the way back to pre-First World War. So you look at the way that Canada was bringing in immigrants, just a little bit more each year, highly screened professionals, points-based system, and then just after COVID, everything goes haywire. You still have the high rates of permanent residents, but you just have a massive expansion in temporary migration. These streams I mentioned, more asylum seekers than ever before, more temporary foreign workers than ever before. To the point where, I mean, you can actually notice this. You can notice this in sort of your frontline staff. You can notice this certainly in real estate. You can notice this in unemployment levels. I mean, if you took any place in the world and just added 3.5 million new people in the course of 3 years, I mean, Canada, no other developed country did this. There was a period of time where Canada was actually one of the fastest growing countries on earth. It was like South Sudan, Syria, and us, and that was entirely because we'd completely blown out immigration. So within that, as I detailed, we were just so overwhelmed. You've had to sort of break a lot of these systems, reduce screening, reduce regulations, and now I would argue we're starting to see the consequences of that.
In our live chat, Cliff says it's a very tough story given there's hundreds of thousands of now illegal immigrants in the country as their student and or temporary work visas have lapsed. The government is dragging its heels. RS says provinces also bear some responsibility. They accredited fly-by-night colleges that were run by political friends and associates. It was a giant loophole. RS is absolutely 100%, and there's a real story there. Tracy says governments like private sector service providers, they've gone online. They save money on human resources as well as things like postage. People are given their different interpretations on this, the different take on this. You can send us an email, by the way, if you're hearing this later. You can send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com or leave a comment on the YouTube episode. We're talking to Tristin Hopper of the National Post. Jeremiah says a Scottish midwife faces deportation from a country the Scottish Highlanders created. Laughing my ass off. That from Jeremiah. Okay, interesting. Hey, listen, I don't want to head into this story laughing. There's obviously nothing funny about what happened at LaGuardia Airport, to say the least. I think a nation in mourning. These two pilots killed in just a tragic, I don't want to be careful how I frame it. I guess a miscommunication, whatever you want to call it. The investigation continues to this day. But I wanted to, on the language front, we got a note from a real talker by the name of Arn down in southern Alberta, and he sent a link to this story. It's a CBC story, and he said it drives me up the wall when a national tragedy like this is co-opted by the culture wars. Did you see this? Michael Russo has been summoned to Ottawa, the Air Canada CEO, over his English-only condolence video following the LaGuardia crash. The head of Canada's largest airline, by the way, this after the Official Languages Committee voted to call him to answer for this video. He spoke two words in français. En français, he said, basically hello and goodbye, bonjour, merci at the end. There was French titles on the video, and I guess his position on this, my paraphrase of it, is basically wanted to communicate as effectively as possible, delivered it in English. But the Commissioner of Official Languages, as of Tuesday afternoon, so let's call it 18 hours from when we're talking here, 18 hours later, said that they had received 84 complaints about the video. Some politicians are, Yves-François Blanchet, BQ leader, as an example, suggesting perhaps the CEO of Air Canada must seriously ask himself, this is a quote, must seriously ask himself whether he has not clearly disqualified himself from the position that he holds. Your thoughts on this?
I mean, this is obviously unserious. I would point out, guess when the last fatal incident involving Air Canada was. So the last time, I mean, you've had people die of heart attacks or whatever on.
Sure.
The last time, because of a crash, someone died on an Air Canada flight. It was 1983, and so that's I was born in 1987, so my entire lifetime there has been no one killed in an Air Canada crash. And that 1983 crash was actually the crash that killed Stan Rogers. That was an on tarmac fire. So the next time you fly and there's a smoke detector in the bathroom, that was a safety protocol brought in because of the fire that killed folk singer Stan Rogers. So Air Canada, as much as we like to complain, does have serious people in it and is able to fly hundreds of flights every day in very severe conditions and go decades without anyone dying on any of their flights. On the one hand, you have serious people who can fly people at 500 kilometers an hour multiple times a day and miraculously, unbelievably, avoid anybody getting hurt in any of that. And then on the other side, you have a government who says, actually, you should focus on, this small language thing you screwed up. So it's something I sort of run into often in the modern state of Canada. Just serious people having unserious people, and this is a very unserious thing to do, to obsess about the language used and if you delivered it all in French and Anglophone enthusiasts were yelling at him for doing that, I would have a similar reaction. I mean, two pilots are dead who worked for Air Canada, and you think the most important thing here is the language used in a condolence video. I would say the people in charge of running airplanes shouldn't have to listen to you.
Huh. I mean, I'll recognize, and this is a good point from Cliff, and we want to make sure that we continue to mention these pilots' names. I think that's important. Antoine Faure and Mackenzie Gunter, who were killed in that crash, by all reports, did everything that they could.
This wasn't a case of pilot error. Well, one of the things, if you look at all sort of the close, that 44-year record of no deaths, there's any number of incidents in which Air Canada got very close to a complete hull loss, everybody's killed, and then at the last minute, the best example being the Gimli glider. I mean, everyone should have died on that, but it just happened. The pilots knew exactly what to do.
I'll take Cliff's point. He says one of the pilots is from Quebec. It's a massive lapse in judgment by the CEO and his PR team. Ms. KD says, the flight was from Montreal. One of the pilots was Francophone. Okay, and, maybe I'm off on this. I mean, maybe public opinion will swing way to the other side. Real Talker Arn, who sent me the note on this, because he was really bugged by it, and by the way, I didn't read his entire message. He was very complimentary about sharing his condolences about the pilots and the like. I'm talking about, like, the CEO of a major corporation being summoned to appear in front of a board and political leaders calling for his head, calling for his resignation because in the immediate aftermath of an airline disaster, he didn't deliver his, and the condolences, and again, so I'm an English speaker. This is my opinion from Alberta. Quebecers would turn up their nose to my opinion in the first place, I'm sure. But release a subsequent video. I mean, there were closed captions on it.
What do you want the CEO of Air Canada to be focusing on? I mean, do you want him to be focusing on the families of the pilots, safety protocols, ensuring this never happens again, making sure that there aren't ripple effects that cause because often you'll have stress within an organization after an incident like this, and that leads to another potential. So what do you want the Air Canada CEO to be doing right now? Do you want him to be dropping everything and going to Ottawa to answer to a parliamentary committee, or do you want him to be dealing with the aftermath of their first fatal tragedy in 44 years?
Yeah. Fair point, and I'm okay if people want to disagree. Jill, for example, says immigrants should speak better English, but the CEO of Air Canada shouldn't speak the official languages. Okie dokie. I think that's a comical for entertainment purposes, perhaps, Jill, summary of what we've been talking about. But if a Scottish speaker, someone with a Scottish brogue, as they say. Anyway, I digress. I've said my point. I've made my position. Before we run out of time, I know you got a busy morning ahead of you. We always appreciate you jumping on Pacific time, by the way.
Yeah, very important.
Before you have to get your day started. I wanted to talk quickly about the Toronto real estate story that you've got, because on the immigration front, this is an interesting side effect, right? People can subscribe to your first reading. It's an email that goes out. They can check everything out at nationalpost.com. But home prices are dropping in Toronto. I would suggest it's probably good news for first time or relatively entry level-ish, whatever that means anymore, home buyers in Toronto. But a result of the Carney Liberals clamping down on immigration. Take us into the numbers.
Oh, yeah. So right now, I guess the benchmark price in Toronto And it's going to be slightly different in Alberta, whatever. But the benchmark price, average home price in Toronto, is now at the point where it was inflation adjusted in 2016. So if you take, I think the price was 750,000 in 2016. So if you adjust that for inflation, it's about where it is now, 930,000. So in markets like Toronto, you're seeing something we haven't seen in real estate for a very long time, particularly in major centers. Everything's going up, up, and then it's starting to trend downwards. And you're seeing, that's not me talking, there's any number of economic reports, Bank of Canada, TD, saying this whole time, because one of the things about the Canadian real estate bubble, which is the worst bubble in the world, except maybe Portugal, is that no matter how bad the economy got, so stagnant productivity, a devalued dollar, all of these things that used to portend lowered real estate. So you'd be like, well, the economy's in shambles, but at least houses are getting cheaper. Canada, since at least 2006, didn't matter what was happening to the economy, didn't matter how much lower our relative quality of life was getting. Real estate prices kept going up, and this is the first time, certainly in my adult life, that you've seen that not happening, where you actually have real estate responding to local conditions. And the balance of the evidence seems to indicate that one thing that was inflating our immigration is, again, if you're taking 1 million newcomers in a single year, and Canada only builds about 200,000 new homes a year. So you have an excess of 800,000 new people who have to be crammed into the existing real estate. So this isn't about, whether or not you like immigrants or racism or whatever. I mean, it's just arithmetic. If you take 800,000 new people per year and are cramming them into an existing it's going to drive rents. It's going to drive real estate prices. So we still have very high immigration. We're still at 400,000 a year. Temporary migration is still 5% of the population. 1 in every 20 people in the country is a temporary migrant on some visa stream, which is one of the highest it's ever been. So it's still very high, but even just a small dialing back of the all-time record-breaking post-COVID highs has resulted pretty quickly in some sanity being restored to the real estate field.
Good news for buyers, tougher news for those that are looking to exit the market or, sort of hatch the nest egg, so to speak. Before we let you go, Tristin, you were just in Alberta's capital city. I should give you a little bit of shit for not reaching out. We would love to have you in studio, but I understand that you were able to observe one of Edmonton's iconic residents, her entire existence, or at least her location of residence at Edmonton's Valley Zoo has always been a very polarizing one. But you got to watch Lucy.
I saw Lucy. Yeah. So I went to your Edmonton Valley Zoo. Very nice. And here's the thing: Lucy is retired as a zoo exhibit. So if you're like, "Can I go gawk at her while eating popcorn?" and they say, "No, we don't do that anymore."
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So Lucy, you can't actually go into her enclosure. So what she does now is she gets up, takes a bath, she's given her meds, and then what she does is she'll sort of and I'm just getting this from zoo staff, so I know people just assume they're all liars and etc. But what I heard from zoo staff is Lucy's daily routine is she just sort of wakes up, goes to the door, and then decides whether or not she wants to walk, and they say the hinge point is -10. If it's anything above -10, she will go for a walk. So it was a particularly sunny day when I'm there. And yeah, Lucy's existence is now, she will just go for a walk, sort of she's always been able to walk all around the park, which apparently is somewhat unique for an Asian elephant. You wouldn't do that with, most different types. So she's always had kind of an even temperament. So it was interesting to watch. They make you stand back, and then this is just Lucy going for a walk and just sort of doing what she feels like. So she went out, and I saw her eat snow for like 20 minutes, and then she'll go to this particular maintenance shed, and she liked drinking the water from that maintenance shed from the other one, and then they're like, oh, eventually she'll just sort of wander back into the parking lot, and there's a tent there where she can take a nap, and then she comes back and wanders back. So actually reminded me of my own grandma, taking the walker down to a coffee shop, bullshitting with a bunch of other elderly people, maybe playing some snooker, and then sort of wandering back. So I don't know. It was interesting to see that because obviously, for a variety of reasons, it is no longer popular to keep elephants in captivity, similar to how we don't keep cetaceans in captivity. So Lucy is very much the last of her era, but it's you can I could understand why zoo staff resisted transferring her to a sanctuary, and that obviously has come up because you see her, she's moving extremely slowly.
Yeah.
She obviously has pretty severe arthritis, so it is one of those things where yeah, you can say, well, she should go to a sanctuary, she should be back in Sri Lanka, she should be hanging around with all these other elephants, having elephant friends and playing elephant bocce ball. But my sense looking at her is she's an extremely old elephant who's only ever known the company of humans, has trouble walking. So you have your ideal that, she's in Sri Lanka and none of this ever happened.
Yeah.
Or she's in her golden years. Okay, an elephant that can barely move.
It's too late. It's too late to move her now. That's a fact. Everybody acknowledges that. Just even the fact that we bring this up, we'll get emails. I guarantee it. I interviewed Bob Barker about this when he was in Edmonton. I was hosting Breakfast Television. That would have been 15 years ago, 12 years ago, something like that. And he was here to advocate for her move to basically. I have my opinion on this has swung back and forth because what the hell do I know? But there's been documentaries about it. I've had an opportunity to interview at that time the individual that was the chief vet in charge of her care. And as you alluded to, a lot of people felt that there was a cover up and the vet was lying and they were trying to keep Lucy for financial reasons or other reasons. And the zoo itself has required.
So the zoo obviously is just hemorrhaging money taking care of an elephant, and she's not an exhibit. If you show up there, I just happen to be there while they're like, oh, she's taking her walk. But if you ask, can I go see Lucy? They say, no, she's retired.
I didn't know about that part. There's the whole thing too about her respiratory issues. They say apparently she has a condition where, she doesn't breathe through her trunk. She has to breathe through her mouth.
Yeah, the story they told me, and again, well, if you're just going to accuse the Edmonton Zoo of being liars, which is weird because I'm talking to all these, these young women with blue hairs and septum piercings, and I'm like, so these are the evil, sort of animal torturers who've just been holding this elephant captive for profit this whole time. Anyway, but yeah, they're saying Lucy the story is Lucy was abandoned by her family, and they say she's got, I forget what it was. I'm not an elephant vet, but it's something you can't breathe through your nose. So you didn't get along well with the other elephants. Pretty standard in the wild. If a member of your family is going to hold you back, just leave them to die somewhere.
You move on with them. That's like half my Instagram algorithm is aging lions being left behind or taken down by their rival. Anyway, I digress. The time to move her, if there would have been a time, would have been 30 years ago, like 25 years ago, 20 years ago. Nobody thinks she turned 50 on Canada Day last year. Nobody thinks, I don't think that she should be moved right now. And also, two things can be true at the same time, or many things can be true at the same time. Number one, I don't think anybody I think the zookeepers themselves probably have poured themselves into her care and I guarantee care very deeply about Lucy the elephant. I've never had any doubt about that. Whether or not she's a good fit at a small zoo in Edmonton can be debated. I would argue no. Hindsight's 2020. And also, to be fair, and we've interviewed the CEO of the Calgary Zoo and the Wilder Center on this about this exact subject, and you see it in like Cincinnati and Brooklyn, like all these zoos around the world. The mandate of zoos has changed and evolved, and I think that zoos can play an important role in conservation and education and whatever, like protecting species that are close to extinction, that sort of a thing. But like no one's gonna open, SeaWorld is not expanding next year. Like nobody's bringing in elephants into zoos except for exceptional circumstances, like you said, maybe orphans. So I don't know, it is what it is in 2026.
What I think is hilarious, because West Edmonton Mall did this and Vancouver Aquarium did this, all these dolphin shows, you're saying, well, it's it's dolphins can roam hundreds of kilometers, it's not fair to keep them in these small tanks. So what they're doing is just replacing them with seals, which is it's just kind of a middle finger to seals.
It is,
because the seals literally don't mind. They're just like, hey, you guys, like just lazing around for 18 hours a day and then like mildly doing tricks, versus these dolphins are winners. We got to actually send them back to the ocean to get some dolphin stuff done, but you guys you don't have anything going on, which I think is fair. Actually,
it's also like on the predator prey conversation. If you're a seal, Swimming freely and being fed somewhere where there's absolutely no orcas nor great whites has got to be a pretty plum situation.
There's definitely a pattern in zoos where you take these sort of high achieving animals like elephants, orcas, and we're not putting them in zoos anymore. That's sad. But there's all these loser animals that we can put there. That's, you're a tortoise, you're a ferret. What else you got going on?
Yeah,
hang out in the zoo.
They had plenty of time to establish themselves, and regrettably,
nothing wrong with seeing a ferret.
Yeah.
Honestly, people like familiar things. I could fill a zoo with just cats. And I think people would visit.
Oh, you'd probably sell out every single day. Hey, thanks for doing this. Always good to see you. People can read your work at nationalpost.com. And, of course, follow you on X. We'll have all the links in the show notes. Tristin Hopper in our feature interview. Presented by Tristin, shall we say, maybe a 1997 Mercedes
I used to drive a 1987 Mercedes 190D.
190D. Bulletproof. Good to see you, pal. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you.
You got it. That's Tristin Hopper of the National Post. Do you have, or have you had? You've been in Edmonton now. I think about the same time as me, ish, approximately. Like you've been here long enough. Have you ever had like a strong position on Lucy?
Sure.
What do you think?
We've talked about this. I dated a girl who's Tammy Wing.
Right,
her mother is head of Valley Zoo Development Society.
Course.
So I spent some time at the zoo and with Lucy, and all this discussion that even when Bob Barker was doing it and people were like rallying behind him, I was like, this is a lost cause. Like when an elephant is taken into captivity, especially as young as Lucy, like 2 years old, you've got like a 5-year window. After that, like there's a very low, if not negative, like 0% chance you can take them to a sanctuary and put them with other elephants or like put them back in the wild is like out of the question. So like when Lucy is alone
well, they got these sanctuaries though.
Yeah, but it's really hard to enter especially Lucy's 50 years old, like decades alone, and then you introduce her into a society where she's got to learn rank and file. There's no way that's.
And what if they don't accept her?
Anyway, it's a lost cause. So
I gotta stop saying anyway because it's not. I don't mean to. I'm not dismissing what you're saying.
I'm just saying my feeling in general, and I know she was taken into captivity a long time ago. But nowadays, like, I used to be someone on the fence, even when I was, seeing this girl and being involved with the zoo and stuff. I've told you before, I'm the same as you. Like, I think kids, youth in general need to see animals up close to respect them and understand why nature is of value and needs to be protected, right? But at the same time, like Tristin was saying, like only the loser animals really get tortured and taken so much nowadays, right? Like the lions, the tigers, like these are the ones like people are saying, no, don't go out into the wild and grab these beautiful, majestic creatures anymore. But grab these little monkeys and these little tortoises, and you know what I mean? So for me, across the board, I think with the advent of AI and other things, and obviously like HD video and YouTube and stuff, there's way better ways to teach kids about nature nowadays than going around the world and netting a bunch of animals, right?
I want to get to what real talkers have to say about this because there's a whole bunch of thoughts on Lucy and there's a whole bunch of thoughts on zoos and everything else we talked to Tristin about. Grateful to have you here with us, whether it's our live stream presented by California Closets or, of course, if you're checking this out on the podcast or on YouTube later on. This episode is happening with the support of Athabasca University. And for those of you across the country that may be tuning in, BC, Alberta, heck, you may be out in Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, whatever the case is, if you're considering a return to post-secondary, if you're looking to level up for a job market that's full of opportunity right now, right fits oftentimes depend on your prep. And if you're looking for an undergraduate degree, maybe it's a grad degree like an MBA, maybe you're just interested in poking around on a couple of courses to get a sense if maybe a new profession, a new industry might be a good fit for you, be sure to take 2 seconds to check out athabascau.ca. They offer literally hundreds of world-class accredited online degrees and courses that are designed so you can complete your education wherever and whenever it works for you. It means that you're setting the pace. You want to work ahead? Great. You need to fall behind? No problem. There's an AU advantage that starts there But it goes so much further, including online professional development. Find all the details. Select your path today at athabascau.ca. A shout out to our friends at Solar by Kuby, now into their 11th year in business. This is a true made in Alberta success story. Two oil field electricians who saw big opportunity in renewables. Now the busiest solar installer in Western Canada. And that means, of course, that their installation schedule is starting to fill for spring into summer 2026. If you're looking to go green in your home or business, you're going to want to make sure you check out kuby.ca today. That's KUBY.ca. You can get a free solar quote, and once you give their team the green light, the engineers will start drafting the plan for your installation, so there's no delay once the snow melts and their teams are up on the roof. Kuby is Canada's trusted leader in solar energy. Online at kuby.ca. Our friends at Friesen Brothers ready to hook you up for Easter. This is what our family is doing. If you're looking at maybe a smaller group, 4 people, looking for, kind of a classic Easter dinner box, you can place that order today, anytime before April 9th on their website, cateringbyfriesen.com. I'm personally today going to recommend the signature Easter meal. This one, it goes above and beyond. They leave absolutely nothing out. At cateringbyfriesen.com, you can order your signature Easter meal, including roasted turkey, scalloped potatoes, an unbelievable feast, creamy dill carrots, that's my personal favorite, Granny's stuffing, Caesar salad. They've got their Friesen Brothers tray buns. There's nothing like a warmed tray bun with a little room temperature butter on it. Turkey, oh my gosh, don't even get me started. Of course, they're going to hook you up with the gravy and the cranberry sauce and apple crumble pie as well. Just $239 plus GST for 6 people. Totally stress-free. Order before April 9th at cateringbyfriesen.com. And our friends at North Road Investment Council reminding you that second set of eyes oftentimes can be the difference between a languishing or successful investment strategy, and that's what they're offering Real Talkers right now. You may have someone already managing your investments, whether that's your corporate or perhaps your family investments, and of course helping you with your retirement planning. But a second set of eyes will always bring that benefit. North Road Investment Council offers this at an hourly rate, and if you happen to mention Real Talk, they're going to discount that rate. Life's financial journey doesn't always follow a straight path, and North Road Investment Council offers expert navigation both inside and outside of Alberta. You can request your consultation today at northroadic.com. Got a lot of people talking about Lucy the elephant right now. Some are saying
I don't
this
mean
is
to laugh. It's really serious.
No, it's not. I mean, it is what it is. Like, she's, I was just reading just real quickly. They say that the average lifespan for an elephant, her species in particular,
50
is
to 60 years.
I read 45, maybe 50 to 60 in captivity. She's 50 now.
You get an extra 10, 15 if they're in the wild.
So you're getting like veterinary care. There's not lionesses trying to take you down.
No, they live longer in the wild.
Right? Yeah.
They live less in captivity.
Oh, less in captivity.
Yeah, about 10, 15 years.
Oh,
less.
really?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
How does that make sense?
I don't know. That's just what I
Really?
read. Yeah, I just
Interesting.
Googled it. They live around 50 to 70 years in wild, 50 to 60 in captivity.
Huh, interesting. That doesn't sound good, like a good deal for Lucy.
I mean, yeah, and there's people in here saying, they've watched, documentaries on re-releases of elephants into the wild, and that's all great. I've seen that too, but go look at numbers. There's 20,000 elephants globally estimated in captivity.
How many?
Around 20,000 or something like that. And in the last 20 years that have been in captivity, in the last 20 years. And in those last 20 years, since I think 2006, they've tried to re-release 150 back into the wild. I think there was a low success rate of that. But I mean, just think about that. There's 20,000 and maybe 100, 80 to 100 have been re-released or put in sanctuaries with success rates. So, I mean, it's futile. If these elephants are taken in, especially young, and they've spent decades like Lucy just alone with humans, I mean, I think it would just be sad to put them back into some sort of hierarchy or whatever, right? But I do understand that,
Tony's making a point in our chat, says a while ago the zoo brought over another elephant to keep her company. Lucy was so pissed off she kept attacking the younger elephants, so she's very territorial. So I'm blown away that elephants, the typical lifespan is longer in the wild.
Yeah.
But
it's just
so
nature.
interesting. They
It's
say
natural.
limited space and exercise in captivity, obviously.
Yeah.
Foot and joint problems from hard surfaces. And stress and, like you said, disrupted social groupings.
Yeah.
So, but I it's the attitude from 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, very different. And I recognize, we had like as a family, we had like a family meeting a couple years ago where the kids, we love going down to Calgary, my hometown, love visiting Calgary. The Calgary Zoo is beautiful, and they've invested like a ton of dough in there. They've just opened up that, I can't remember what they call it, but like the northern whatever. It's like basically the Canadian exhibit, and they've got all kinds of interesting, they have grizzlies and black bears, and I'm sure that they'll have those 2 cougar cubs in there. Remember, their mom was hunted outside Canmore. I don't know actually if they're there, but just another reference on the roles I guess that zoos can play. But I've gone there and I've shared it on the show before. We don't need to spend too much time on this. It's not the top story today, but with mixed feelings. Like, number one, for a kid, it's amazing for a kid to be able to see a hippo like up close, or to be able to observe a grizzly bear through a pane of glass.
When I was a kid,
but at the same time, it's like, I will say this. There's a part of me, and this is not a judgment to any biologist that works at the zoo or anything like that, but a part of me, John, I just can't ignore it, is like, it feels a little shitty, because you kind of feel like you're part of it.
Yeah.
And these animals are in there, and you're like, man, I bet that, orangutan would love to be all over the place as opposed to 2,000 square feet.
Yeah, we're all animals, so it kind of feels weird. I mean, it'd be like, anyways, I'm not going to go into it, but yeah, I agree with you the same. Like, I grew up in a small town in the GTA in Ontario, had one of the largest zoos, privately owned zoos. Maybe people know of it, the Bowmanville Zoo. It was eventually shut down for obviously animal abuse and things that happened behind the scenes with tigers and other things. But my childhood, not childhood, but like by the time I was like 8 to 12, going there, seeing seeing bears and monkeys and other things up close, I remember it vividly as being a life-changing experience. And understanding that, wow, these things that you read about in books, and back then we didn't have the advent of like 4K video on YouTube, but like these things that you see on paper or in newspapers or on screens on your TV, they're so much more life-changing in person when you get up close to them, when you can put your hand on the glass and see their breath.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it makes you respect nature and be like, okay, there's a reason to like have separation from these animals. There's also a reason to like give them their space and protect environments that hold these animals. And I know that that's not the same when you look at a screen or whatever. So I understand that like zoos can have a positive impact. But then when you look at like just in general, I'm sure the Calgary Zoo is amazing. But when you look at profit and revenue, I mean, I'm sure it's not incredible.
I think they do pretty good business.
I mean, I'm sure it's making a profit.
Yeah.
But I mean, in general, I don't know. I don't know if there's a reason for them anymore. I mean, we don't go to circuses anymore and see this stuff.
I think that zoos and circuses, like generally speaking, are very different, though. I mean, circuses.
It's all a big show with animals.
Yeah,
I
but
really know.
the zoo is like there's like dedicated professionals with these enclosures that are designed to sort of best mimic the animal's natural habitat, and again, like, so there's going to be total generalizations because people can point out there's these like wildlife parks in Alberta and certainly across the United States, and look at Tiger King, the documentary, the whole 9 yards, where animals have been treated like horrifically.
Yeah, I would definitely say Canada's better,
even in Alberta, but even there are some wildlife parks that are privately owned that are like disgraceful, and those cannot be mentioned with a straight face in the same conversation as like big zoos with multi-million-dollar budgets.
Sure.
The circus, to me, and again, not all circuses, but probably most circuses, you're getting bears to like balance on balls and like tigers to roar on command when the ringleader cracks the whip. I know that I sound like I'm from the 1920s, say, but like, I remember as a kid going to the Shrine Circus, riding on the backs of an elephant in like would it have been in the Saddle Dome or maybe the Stampede Corral even? I don't remember. Like, that to me feels very, very different. And I don't even know, like, did you go to the Shrine Circus when you were a kid? Like, is that even still a thing? The Shrine Circus was a huge, huge thing. It still is. Wow, look at this. Founded in 1906. Now they say, though, are they still using animals? I don't know. Gosh, I'd be curious to know. it's a very special and interesting experience as a kid, a wide-eyed kid. But then, the longer that you get into it, look at this. I Google Shrine Circus. One of the first things that comes up is PETA, PETA.org. Shrine Circus, they're campaigning against it, say where animal exploitation takes center ring. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to know if Real Talkers have been to a circus lately, taken their kids to circus. You don't see them like you used to.
I no, not at all. I mean, all of this stuff with animals is kind of going away. But I just Googled what the estimates are that the Calgary Zoo is making. They generate about 60 to 65 million a year, but after costs, they only make about between 1 and 5 million. So the margins are small, right? Like this isn't like, and I understand that it's like most of that money they make as well goes back to societies that help animals and obviously to pay, highly educated, veterinary staff and things like that. But still, at the end of the day, I just don't know. I mean, and again, I haven't been to a zoo since that time I was talking about in years. So it's kind of, I don't know. You know me. I'm of the vein that like we should work on sanctuaries and improving, protected environmental regions like where these animals grew up and live. Just off the top of my head, the rainforest, for example, like let's improve, protecting those environments. And I mean, there's all sorts of ways to document those environments without actually disturbing them nowadays with drones and different things. And I just think that's way more valuable than taking a species, out of its environment and putting it in a cage or a windowed facility. We could also just build them huge enclosures and then just pave all their habitats so we could, everyone had lots of parking. We come see them. Matthew says, what boggles my mind is I saw Lucy. He says, or it may have been the other elephant, which was still alive at the time, says during a grade 1 visit to the zoo. He says he's almost 27 now. Matthew, you're all grows up. Says she's still kicking. It says they should have moved Lucy before, but I'm glad they're taking care of her and investing money to renovate her home this year. Dubious says the Lucy story's evergreen. I feel like I'll be 75 years old hearing the debate rage on. I get it. I feel like there's no debate. I don't see anybody seriously calling to have her moved now. Tony says the staff at the zoo go out of their way to take care of her and make her comfortable. They absolutely love her. Jill says, I can't believe we're still talking about this. I mean, that's the even worse picture is if you just use this animal up for what she's been in there since she's 2 years old. She's 50, 48 years, and then just throw her back into the wild or a sanctuary where she has to like find her way in the hierarchy. That's just cruel, right? So yeah. Tracy says, I've enjoyed visiting zoos and aquariums around the world, but I fully respect conservation concerns. Says I've rarely seen abuse of animals. Ken K says, and I 100% agree with you. He says seeing a tiger or a polar bear pacing all day in their small, containment always bothered me when it came to zoos, but says I have mixed feelings on zoos in general. Ken, I totally agree. Like you see this drone footage in many cases it's in countries where there's been like you can see the orca example I'm using is not in Ukraine, but one of the big issues when Russia started attacking Ukraine was like these zoos were being abandoned for humans fleeing for their own safety, and then people trying to save the lives of these animals stuck in these zoos. You've had other nations where there's been like financial insolvency, whether it's been with the organization or generally speaking in society, and you'll see like abandoned there's brutal situations where there's, dolphins and orcas. They'll send in, these animal advocacy groups will send in drones and get photos of orcas just like swimming in circles ad nauseum. And it's like, like I said, I keep talking to you guys about my Instagram algorithm. It's like all orcas. I mean, some days it's just orcas doing the wave thing to knock the seals off the ice floes. Those videos I'm talking about, like the smartest hunters, the smartest predators on planet Earth, the orca. And we've got them in these tanks. Anyway, I'm on a soapbox now. I never intended to get on it, but I love it. It feels well. And maybe this is kind of like where Real Talk lands on this too, is like nuance and gray areas and 2 things or 3 things or 10 things can be true at the same time. But I just thought it was interesting that Tristin went and was able to catch Lucy. I had no idea that they had that they had sort of like shut her off from the regular public viewings. Remember back in the day, I think you used to be able to watch her paint with her trunk. She would like paint, like actually hold a brush, and I think they would sell these for charity. I hosted a couple events where they were selling Lucy's paintings. Really amazing stuff. Denise says elephants are social beings just like humans. They have best friends. They thrive among other elephants. Kathy just says, Jespo, you're right. Hindsight's 20/20. What's that? They say know better, do better, right?
basically. Jillian says she straight up saw a giraffe cross a road near the London Zoo. It was being moved to another building. Said that was absolutely wild. This is an inappropriate. Well, it's not inappropriate. It's biology. Have you ever seen a hippo take a dump? Have you ever seen a hippo? Have you ever seen it? We were at the Calgary Zoo a couple summers ago. My 10-year-old, he would have been 8 at the time, and we were privy to that relatively up close. Jeez. And it is one of the most friends. If you're on a public computer. Maybe don't recommend this. Do it in the privacy of your own home. Go into the Google privacy settings if you don't want to pollute your. But in all seriousness, you can find it on YouTube. Find it on Google. How hippos do it. It is the tails into play. Guys, thank me later. Impress your kids. They're gonna love it. I guaranteed. We're going to get into a couple of. This is serious stuff. The Alberta government obviously changing. You know this if you've been listening to the show the last few days, paying attention to the news cycle, making it more difficult to access medical assistance in dying in the province. And we've heard a number of different opinions on this. Some groups, some individuals support the move. Others are calling it an attack on health autonomy. We're going to get to an email, in particular one from Aly today that is, it's a firsthand story. And basically here, we've put the invitation out to Real Talkers. Share your stories with us, and to the rest of the audience, you can have a listen yourself with an open mind and open heart, and let us know if it influences how you feel about this. That's coming up in just a moment. It is Wednesday, and every week, midweek, courtesy of our friends at Tourism Jasper, we have a chance to step outside of the news cycle, to take a break, just like trips to Jasper themselves, and to focus on the memories that lie in wait there in Canada's crown jewel, that is Jasper National Park. And today, we want to shine a light on an individual business, a relatively new one, Ursidae Lair. This is a Scotch tasting lounge right in the heart of Jasper that everybody is talking about. Now, John, Ursidae, the translation of it, by the way, a family of large, powerful plantigrade carnivores or omnivores.
Are they in zoos?
Yeah, with long, shaggy coats and strong claws. They often dwell in dens or lairs. Animals just like bears. And this is a perfectly named spot in Jasper. By day, I love it. You can go in day or night. During the day, it's a really popular bakery, really friendly spot, like a welcoming environment. They bring you in, and then by night, it transforms into a Scotch tasting lounge that's just perfect. With over 40 choices of premium Scotch, it offers a piece of the Highlands right there in downtown Jasper. Kim Stark is the local entrepreneur and in Jasper who says, Kim says, once felt like an outsider among the suits and the cigars that were so common in those highfalutin Scotch dens. But when Kim discovered the approachable and, she says, the downright delicious world of Scotch cocktails, she felt a genuine connection with the world and wanted to share that inviting feeling with others. And so that was the inspiration behind the entire place. I just love that. At Ursidae, you'll find all the staples of a Scotch lounge, right? So you can get your smoked drinks, of course. There's nothing like the smell of that when the bartenders are putting those together and smoking that wood right there in the room. Dram, well tidy, scran, yes, even a selection of cigars for those of you that indulge. But you're also going to find, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, a really unpretentious and totally welcoming atmosphere. So picture like soft jazz, for example, right? A great place for conversation. Maybe you're connecting with friends you haven't seen in a long time. Maybe you're with your best friends that you see all the time. But you could sample a Scotch flight. So if you'd like to try a few different options from different regions, obviously sort of different methods, that kind of idea, different geographic origins, you can, of course, also wrap it up with, they've got their affogato, the decadent cheesecake. Who doesn't love cheesecake, right? You can learn more by checking out their website, ursidaelair.com. Showing it to you right now. It's absolutely beautiful. You can reserve a table right there. You can also, of course, check out their different menus. Check this out, Johnny. The website here, ursidaelair.com. They've done a beautiful job with the design of it, so you can feel free to poke around there. And then you can also find them on Instagram. Go ahead and give them a follow. Love doing that live. There you go. And you can check out some of their offerings. Their social media team does just a beautiful job with the photography. Look at that. This cocktail here. This is they say a bright, smooth, and quietly refreshing cocktail called the Dream Cloud. Guest favorite this month. They blend Appleton Estate's signature rum with strawberry and lime. Unbelievable. Wouldn't have expected to see that there, but look at this. Always a treat when you visit Ursidae Lair. Make sure you make that part of your next Jasper memory the next time you're out in the national park. If you're going to be posting about it on Instagram, on X, wherever it is, make sure you hashtag MyJasper and Real Talk RJ to put it on our radar. We'd love to feature your memories on a future episode of MyJasper Memories, proudly presented weekly, every Wednesday, in fact, right here on Real Talk by our friends at Tourism Jasper. We got a lot of people asking about this Jody Gondek story, by the way. Have you seen this? The RCMP
the raid
executing
or
search
whatever?
warrants? Yeah. So I will say this, and we'll touch on it. Obviously, former Mayor Gondek has been on the show many times. She's a friend of the show for sure. So all I would say at this point is that, and I'll reference reporting from Megan Grant at CBC News, but the RCMP has confirmed, as have a representative for former Ward 10 Councillor Andre Shabat, former Councillor Sean Chu, and the mayor herself, former Mayor Gondek, has commented on this. It's sort of a surface level, simply to say that in Gondek's case, she described the search, the execution of that warrant at her home as very invasive. But there is an investigation, and you can check out Livewire if you want to, out of Calgary. They do a great job with it on some of the details here. The details are not fulsome, and there's not a lot. I'm not going to speculate on this story because who knows what the hell. But it's an RCMP-led corruption investigation, and as part of that investigation, search warrants executed on a number of properties, including the two former councillors and the former mayor. So CBC reporting on this, citing sources where they have verified the identity, but they're protecting the names because they're not authorized to comment publicly. They have confirmed, has the CBC, Megan Grant in particular, that former Mayor Gondek's cell phone was seized. Gondek, in a written statement, said, "I've been fully cooperative. I respect the legal process. It's been invasive. My lawyer and I will review it closely to ensure the search was justified." Nobody really knows what this is all about. We certainly don't know enough to comment on it. I'm not going to comment on it. I do think it's kind of interesting, alleged corruption. We'll see, perhaps the search warrants, again, and this is pure speculation, take this for what it's worth, which is not much, but, the RCMP, could be executing search warrants to seize evidence that could implicate somebody, or it could implicate somebody else, because your phone is seized doesn't necessarily mean that you're the one that is alleged to have, been at the heart of the corruption. Or maybe the roof is about to blow off this whole thing and it's been rotten to the core down at Calgary City Hall. I doubt it, but we'll see. I would say this is that, if there's any speculation around, and I'm choosing my words carefully, but around any sort of like collusion or cooperation between the three politicians or former politicians that are being mentioned here, I would remind you all that former Councillor Chu and former Mayor Gondek are about as far apart from one another on mindset, conviction. They're standing in council. They had a very strained relationship. Mayor Gondek was on this show at least a couple of times, talking about allegations around, at that time, Councillor Chu, and the fact that many allegations around his disgraced end to his career as a Calgary police officer were revealed after voters had put him into office there as a city councillor, and she was calling for ethics investigations and the like. And I won't get too deep into it. I would just say it's very interesting to see former Mayor Gondek and former Councillor Chu's names mentioned side by side. Now, who's involved in what capacity, or who's alleged to be involved in what capacity, I guess we'll find out, or we won't, depending on where this RCMP investigation goes. But that's about all that we know about it at this point, and that's definitely about all I'm going to say about it at this point. You can always send us your thoughts. If you want to, of course, send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. You can always do that. Our email inbox is open 24/7, as you know. And what's this? Steve says, Jespo, you can't say I doubt it. That also is premature. Yeah, for sure, Fetz. I'm trying to give you something here. Like, I guess I could just say no comment or not bring it up at all, but you're 100% right. Like, I would just say, let me say this. Here's what I can say with confidence. If former Mayor Gondek and former Councillor Chu were colluding or collaborating on anything, it would blow my mind. But again, it's not my place to comment. Most people won't be commenting on it, so we won't. Randy says, I hope that the RCMP can do better than SNC Lavalin and Sockboy. Assuming that's a reference to former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Yeah, Randy. Or maybe that the RCMP can do a better job than Jeff Callaway and Jason Kenney and the UCP leadership race, right? On the flip side, no shade to RCMP officers, but I think a lot of people felt like that investigation probably could have concluded a little bit more quickly. But what the hell do I know about policing and about big-scale investigations? Big, fat zero. So we'll leave that in the hands of the police. I want to get serious. I don't want to head into this email joking around and being snide and sarcastic because this is about as personal as it gets. We've been inviting you to share your stories, your family's experiences around medical assistance in dying, and that's exactly what Aly did in an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. This is a very powerful story. She shares some details with us that I found very hard to believe, and I think that's the whole reason she's sharing them. That's the whole point. She writes in from Calgary and says, Ryan and team, to my fellow Real Talkers, she says, I wanted to share my story and my thoughts on these recent MAiD restrictions in Alberta. Says in September of 2019, she says, I was scrolling through Facebook one morning and I came across something that stopped me cold. It was a photo of my grandfather with the heading, Missing Senior. He'd been struggling with his health for over a decade, and due to severe pain, he could barely walk. The idea that he was missing was absolutely terrifying. And after calling my uncle in Saskatoon, where my grandpa lived, I phoned my job and I told him what was happening, and then I drove straight there from Calgary. It says the police were no help, but a family member had accessed Grandpa's cell phone records, and we discovered that his last known location was at the hospital, and security footage had shown him entering the building, but no camera had ever recorded him leaving. After 2 exhausting days spent searching the area and asking everybody nearby if they'd seen him, my uncle found my grandpa's body locked into a publicly accessible hospital washroom 3 days after he took his own life. My grandpa was in pain. He'd been in pain for a decade. He chose to end his life at the hospital so staff, presumably, instead of family, would find him because he knew that they would have the professional supports to cope. And even in his final moments, he was thinking of others first. Instead of dying at home surrounded by family, he died on a cold bathroom floor in the hospital where he'd been pleading for help for years. And that's where MAiD comes in, says Aly. Although my grandpa had several undiagnosed conditions, his most severe pain came from unexplained internal symptoms that doctors couldn't identify. And without a formal diagnosis, and since his existing conditions weren't considered terminal, fatal, he didn't qualify for MAiD. And so doctors told him that there were no options left aside from pain management. And over time, even heavy painkillers weren't easing his suffering. Aly says today in Alberta, my grandpa would qualify for MAiD, but if this new legislation passes, he won't, or he wouldn't. I'm sharing this story because my grandfather is proof that banning MAiD does not stop people from choosing to end their lives. This was my grandpa's choice, and he made it as thoughtfully as he could. He knew what it would do to our family. We had already lost my 25-year-old cousin to suicide a few months earlier and my 31-year-old mother, his daughter, in the early 2000s. I can't imagine how much pain it took for him to decide that putting our family through that again was his only option. Aly says there's not a day that goes by that I don't wish I could have held his hand as he took his last breath. I'll never understood why my mother did what she did, or my cousin for that matter, but my grandpa's pain was different. He had wasted away to 100 pounds. Anyone who saw him near the end would have said he looked like he was dying. It would have been hard, but the family would have understood and definitely would have been there to say goodbye. Instead, we spent days asking strangers if they'd seen him. Instead, we got the call from my uncle that he was found dead, locked in a bathroom 10 steps from the hospital entrance, caught entering it on camera, an area that staff never checked for 3 days, despite being told that a missing senior had entered the building. Aly says the hospital later admitted that they were short-staffed. Many employees didn't even know a missing person had last been seen there. You can Google this story, by the way. It's been widely reported in Saskatoon. Aly says people who make the decision to end their lives will do so, regardless of the legality around it. And restricting MAiD only causes greater harm to families, to communities, and she says, to taxpayers. In my grandpa's case, government resources were spent on police, on autopsy procedures, on a Saskatchewan Health Authority investigation, none of which would have been necessary if MAiD was an option. After we found Grandpa, I stayed in Saskatoon to help arrange the funeral, to pack up his apartment, and my job, while initially understanding, couldn't accommodate more than a week off, so I quit. And I missed my college final exams, and I came home to no job and no school, and a downward spiral, says Aly, that led to addiction and financial ruin, and eventually showing up on my dad's doorstep begging for help. I went through detox. I spent all of COVID in and out of rehab. She says, I don't know the exact cost, but I know that I've used more in government services and healthcare than I'll likely ever pay in taxes over the next decade. I'm grateful those services existed, she says, but I shouldn't have needed them. If my grandpa had been approved for MAiD, I could have talked to my instructors, arranged my finals. I could have taken a leave from work. I could have grieved in a healthy way. Instead, the trauma rippled outward, setting off years of avoidable fallout. Aly says my grandpa had 11 grandkids. 6 of us have struggled with addiction after his death. Just 1 had issues prior to. 2 others have faced severe mental health struggles that dramatically reduced their quality of life, and 1 of those 6 later died from fentanyl poisoning. Man, this family's journey. She says, I don't blame the government at all for the choices that my family made in grief, but I can't ignore how many lives and how many public dollars were impacted by my grandpa's lack of access to MAiD. He deserved better, and so do we. She says MAiD discussions often focus, rightfully so, on personal autonomy and suffering in the healthcare systems, but what about the rest of us? What about my uncle, who will never erase the image of his father's body? You know, my cousin that overdosed, the girl who died waiting for a rehab bed that I happened to get first. What about her family? Suicide doesn't affect one person. It's like a bullet that explodes into shrapnel, wounding everybody nearby. Amen. MAiD prevents that shrapnel from tearing into others and allows the person to die with some sense of dignity. Aly says, many conservatives right now are claiming to stand for freedom, but they're continuing to restrict it. It wasn't my choice, she says, to drop out of school, to self-medicate, to survive, or to destroy the relationship that I'd hoped would become a marriage. I didn't choose to attend rehab 3 times or rely on Alberta Works. I was forced into a life where those were my only options, just like my grandpa was forced to choose between agony and dying on a cold tile hospital floor. Where's the freedom, let alone the humanity in that? Aly says, I used to be a functioning, contributing, conservative voting citizen, and then I became an unemployed, addicted, welfare-draining leech, or whatever conservatives call liberals these days. But that experience changed my perspective. You only believe in personal responsibility until you find yourself humbly and desperately accepting help from the taxpayers around you. The system eventually helped me recover, and I'm proud that I can now contribute to it again to help someone else in the position that I was once in. And if conservatives truly want fewer people depending on government support, they need to support genuine personal freedom and autonomy, including access to MAiD and health care for trans youth, so people aren't forced into hopelessness in the first place. She says, obviously, guardrails are important, but they don't stop people once they've made that decision. And the government of Alberta is just increasing the suffering of everybody involved for political theater. My papa was a proud Albertan for 30 years, and I'm so glad he didn't have to live to see what it has become. She says, thanks in advance to my fellow Real Talkers for listening. From Aly down in Calgary. How's that?
What an email. And
right?
I don't want to get into a debate after that, but, it's just my feeling. We need MAiD. I mean, 5,000 suicides, Stats Canada says, around annually in Canada. About 20% of those are people with chronic or physical ailment or pain, often coupled or literally what created mental health issues alongside of that, depression, anxiety. If there's anyone out there, I mean, we all have a bit of depression and anxiety. I don't think there's anyone else. Imagine having crippling forms of that.
Yeah.
And then added on top of that is your health is declining, or you have chronic pain. You can't work. You can't see your family without being in pain, or medicating yourself to the point where you're drowsy. The only time you do have relief is when you're asleep. I mean, people shouldn't be dying in hospital bathrooms or locking themselves in closets with ties around their neck. They should be able to say goodbye to their families in a nice, calm area and die respectfully.
I think I 100% agree with you. And I know, for a lot of people, it's like, we've talked about this on the show over the past number of days since this story surfaced, and since it's, the wheels are in motion in our home province of Alberta, and obviously people will talk about this across the country. And many people feel across the country that access to MAiD needs to be better checked. And there have been some compelling points, including on this show, from you talk about people that are advocating, for example, for persons with disabilities, physical disabilities, intellectual disabilities. We've heard from people that are talking about the impact of poverty in Canada. Like, there's a number of different angles of approach here, right? And we never want, and I think this needs to be said every time we talk about this, we never want people to feel like there's such a burden on society, or there's such a burden on their family, that MAiD is the best option so they can sort of get off everybody's back. That is not what we're talking about. But in cases of incredible pain or terminal disease or whatever the case may be, if you don't believe in, or if you don't support, for example, access to MAiD or abortion or anything else, kindly invite these folks to not request those services. But oftentimes when you look at the dogma here, and I think, really the ideology that drives and the sort of in this case, I think that the religious lobby has gone a long way in this, of course, in influencing the Alberta government here for sure. You have to ask, like, what's good for the individual, what's good for greater society, and this is a province where this government has talked a lot about freedom and autonomy, and this really does feel like a move in the opposite direction. That's not to say that we shouldn't review MAiD in Canada. That's not to say that we shouldn't be able to have these important conversations. And if you're feeling, it's possible to respect what Aly says and to feel pain for her and her family, and also to totally disagree with her. And I will be just as inclined to read a respectful and powerful message from someone that may come at it from a totally different direction. And we invite you to submit that, whether it's a comment on YouTube or Spotify, or an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. But I do think that this is, to say the very least, Sharon, for example, says she can't even imagine the trauma here. She says, what an amazing letter from Aly. She says it really takes courage to share that. I agree. I mean, Aly didn't have to share the part about her own personal journey. She just inserts, briefly the detail around what she was hoping would be a marriage that fell apart. She talks about time in detox. I mean, these are major formative, like dropping out of school, losing your job. I mean, this is major stuff. When she talked about suicide as the bullet that splits into shrapnel, I feel that. I know a lot of people will feel that, Schneid says we need proper healthcare and education funding so we're all getting the care that we deserve. Says down with corporate welfare. Lorraine and I hope that Aly hears this. Perhaps she's watching right now. Lorraine says much love to Aly and just thank her so much for sharing. Tracy's thanking her for sharing. There's a ton of comments here we could read from our live chat powered by Park Power for a long time.
But her story, I imagine there's stories like this.
There's got to be lots, right?
That never get heard. Of family members who are just, they're struggling with, how do I get out of here because I've had enough. There's no cure for what ails me, whether it's physically, mentally, the pain that I'm going through. I want to say goodbye to my family, but I also don't want to tell them what I know they're scared to death to hear and have to go through all that stress while I'm dealing with that stuff. And they just go off somewhere, and however they do it, they go out in a way that is just, it's not a way someone should have to go out. They shouldn't have to hide. They shouldn't have to go in a bathroom or a closet or out in the car, in the garage, whatever it is. I'm not trying to put people's in pictures.
Yeah, we don't
pictures
give
in people's.
Yeah,
but what I'm saying is,
yeah,
like to say, I hear people say. I've seen a few people in the chat who don't agree with MAiD saying this. You shouldn't be offered. No one's being offered death. Like this is the last resort for the large majority of these people who have tried to live a life that isn't just fueled with pain and agony and things like that. And yeah, we should review a lot of cases, but like there should be an option there for people. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. And I want to read some more of these comments.
It also bothers me when people who haven't dealt with chronic pain, depression, anxiety, or any of those things kind of weigh in. My opinion should keep someone here going through agony, you know, when I've never experienced it. It bothers me.
We've got a lot of people in our world today that have very strong opinions on things that they have no fucking idea about.
And then we have to, those people who are going through pain also have to live with you for another 5, 10 years, whatever it is.
You know, Super Chat Ken says the Alberta MAiD bill is one part reasonable and another part catering to the kind of the MAGA Take Back Alberta faction of the UCP. He says, like most bills from this premier. Others of you saying we need a different model for healthcare here in Canada. That from Randy, who says it's time to move on from the Canada Health Act. Kenzie, for example, here is sharing her opinion on this, and that's fine, saying basically being offered death is unacceptable in such a forward society, should only ever be given in terminal cases. Allowing it for mental health is quite horrifying. That's Kenzie's opinion. Kenzie's welcome to have their own opinion. I don't know if you can say being offered death is unacceptable in a forward society. Many people would argue that a forward society is exactly where you will see medical assistance in dying being offered. Saying allowing it for mental health is quite horrifying. And I get this. And again, I want to be clear. I say this from time to time when I feel like it's really important. I am not a mental health professional. Okay. I'm a civilian, and this is my personal thought. I understand where offering MAiD, like when it's presented as offering MAiD, if someone's in for a mental health consultation and they're otherwise going about their day and they're doing everything they can to get everything on track and get healthy in every area of their life, and then their mental health counselor is like, out of the blue, have you ever considered ending your life? Out of context, or as sort of that as a circumstance, as a hypothetical or otherwise, sounds ridiculous, sounds preposterous, sounds like counseled. Yeah, I won't even use the word, but yes. However, also, if we don't understand the miles that people are walking, people that are suffering from mental health, and I can see this as a gray area, and there are people smarter than me that may have smarter opinions on this. But you guys know it's the most difficult day of my professional career. Obviously, when I came on this show 3 days after my best friend ended his life by suicide, and we talked it out, and I know that was something, and I'm not going to sit here, and I don't actually really want to go back to that, even though I feel like we're back at it every single day, and I love him and miss him so much. But this was something that was on his mind. We knew it for years. We just didn't realize how serious he was about it, and we didn't realize the urgency or the immediacy of it. And it's the toughest and most painful lesson you'll ever learn in your life. Something that you can't change and something you can't do anything about. I thought about him. I saw an Instagram reel literally yesterday that I knew would make him laugh. And for like a quarter of a second, John, I went to send it to him. Like, you still forget. You still forget just for a quarter second that he's gone, And I shared this with you. I won't use her name, but a friend of mine reached out from Ontario, a college friend of mine, and she let us know that she's been following what the show has been talking about with MAiD, and she let us know that she was sending a message. I'm not going to read it. It's a personal note, but she was corresponding with us about our discussion about this from the hospital where she is currently admitted, for mental health reasons, and I'm so proud of her, and I just sent her a big note of love and support. But what did she say? I shared the message with you. The one thing she said is, I just want the pain to go away. And if you're not walking the miles that she's walking in her shoes, how can we understand? So if someone is at that point, and it's hard to say something like this without sounding callous, but if someone that's wrestling with their mental health, or for whom this has been a struggle for a long time, if the end of their life in their mind is a foregone conclusion and their mind cannot or will not be changed, maybe we need to have a conversation around the role that MAiD plays in that. for reasons like, and I'm not saying that her grandfather was struggling with mental health. There were a lot of physical issues that Aly detailed. But if someone is like, I am doing this and this is how this story ends, then as a society, what do compassionate supports and dignity look like? And maybe there's not just one answer to it. And there's definitely nuance. And this is a massive gray area with some real blacks and whites. I mean, death and, life and death, black and white, sure. But I can see how someone, would feel very strongly against MAiD in any circumstance. I can wrap my mind around how you get there. Somebody that wants unfettered access to MAiD for everybody, I can see how you would get there, and I can understand why people would have concerns. I mean, what did Super Chat just say about, Ken just said about the legislation? He says, like, it's one part kind of reasonable and one part, throwing a bone to the base. That's possible too. So, let us know what you think on it. We'll keep the conversation going. We're not going to make every episode about it, but as the conversation continues and as we receive messages like we did from Aly, like how long did it take her to put that together? The emotion behind deciding to hit send, to share that for public consumption. We want to honor that. Anubis says conservatives will never understand that restricting choice means that people will just do things in private instead. Like, it's about ensuring that people make hard choices under the guidance of professionals. 100%. You can make the exact same argument around abortions. Like, it's tragic. I don't know if we want to go there, and we don't have to go there right now. I know that this is a lot of heavy lifting for people, but Anubius's comment is absolutely bang on that. You can share your thoughts with us. Perhaps it's in the form of a flamethrower. That is the final episode of every week, presented by our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Your chance to blow off a little steam, your hottest takes, to talk at ryanjesperson.com. As we wrap this episode, friends, we wanted to let you know what's coming up over the next few. In our next episode of the show, that'll be the 22nd of March. We got new polling on the NDP federal leadership race. How's that looking? Plus the Conservatives and Liberals in that dogfight federally. We'll get into it with Liaison Strategies. Our friends at the Alberta Chambers of Commerce in studio for a Real Talk Roundtable. And on Friday, strategist Stephen Carter, one-on-one, before we show some love to Ben Stelter. A couple great shows coming up.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton, member emerita Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.